Once again from DPL Surveillance Equipment. Back at it again. Nice windy day today. We're going to get a little bit of wind noise. I'm just temporarily going outside today to take care of some chores, my garbage, whatever. So, let you guys hear the wind blowing. The Santa Ana winds are blowing the fires and such near Malibu, Thousand Oaks, as far as Burbank, a lot of different spot fires all over the place. This what it's like here in Camarillo, and what a lot of people are going through realistically. Sometimes life's inconveniences are significant reality for a lot of folks in terms of what a lot of people have to go through. 200 people missing. Around those areas where the fires are. So that's a reality. So that they have to deal with for sure. Geez, I locked myself in the garbage bin just now. The wind blew the door closed, and with that loud noise you heard was the sound of the door literally closing on me. Anyway, as I was saying, some of our inconveniences that we go through are just that, first world inconveniences. But when you lose your home to a fire, when you lose your, when families die, 200 people go missing, that's nothing to play around with. And I hate to beat a dead horse, but when Donald Trump had the nerve to come out and talk about forest mismanagement and misallocation of water resources, that's what he said when we had the lake fire. So I guess he decided to drop that stupid piece of rhetoric and come out with another one talking about forest mismanagement in this case. And every conceivable fire department, agency, chief of, etc., governor, mayor, people came out and said, what the hell are you doing? You know, what the hell are you talking about? This is not the time or place for stupid rhetoric and stupid tweets or political sound bites. We got people who need help. You know, if you want to campaign on your own time. But right now, you know, we didn't put you in office to not understand what it means when you have a proper time and place for sound bites and political statements and such. Anyway, there's people who have proposals, who have good ideas. That's what we need to hear from, not people who just want to make stupid statements in hopes of rallying a political base on this side of the table or that side. One of my proposal was and it's not actually my idea, but I just thought we need a solution, so I went in search of a solution. But my proposal or my solution is a forest resilience bond. And that just simply means that all the stakeholders, all the people who have something to lose, utilities, U.S. Forest Service, municipalities, they all have a stake when there's a fire and they have something to lose. And if they can contribute to a forest resilience bond, make your way over to take a look at the actual proposal, the details of the proposal. Make your way over to the Blue Forest Conservancy, I think it's called, But on my website are the details. Just go into the articles directory, click on articles, and look for you can search on fires or fires or fire management or something like that. But there's an article that makes a reference to forest resilience bonds, and every stakeholder is going to contribute to the forest resilience bonds. And the better managed the forests are, the less utilities and the cities and the U.S. Forest Service has to spend fighting fires. So because actually what's happening, you guys, is the forests are so dense because over the years, the federal government has neglected to take the lead in terms of making sure all the states are actively managing the forests. See, this is a federal issue, not a state issue. When you have forests that span from state to state, I don't care if it's California, Montana, Wyoming, whatever, those forests, they don't care about boundaries. When it's a fire doesn't care about this state or that state. What it cares about is fuel. That's the only thing it cares about. So anyway, the Blue Forest Conservancy is looking for all the participants to actually invest money in the management of the forest, trimming back the forest, because over the last 100 years or so, the forest has become so dense with trees, and some of them a lot of them are just dry, waiting to go up in flames and such along with the underbrush. So anyway, what's going to happen is the better manage your forest, or the more you free up water resources. Water resources are depleted dramatically or exponentially when you have overdense forests. So you manage your forest, you free up water resources, you sell more water, clean water, to the utility companies and such, and they in turn save money. So therefore, and the U.S. Forest Services saves money, taxpayer dollars, by not fighting forest fires. When your budget is 16%, where it was 16% gobbled up using resources to fight fires, now the U.S. Forest Service has to allocate over 50% of its budget just fighting fires. So you have to be absolutely retarded to think that you're gonna that's sustainable. It's not sustainable, and the federal government, believe it or not, oversees the U.S. Forest Service. So I don't care what Donald Trump says. Remind him, those of you who can get his ear, or avid supporters or whatever you call yourselves, make sure you understand that the U.S. Forest Service manages the federal forest lands across the nation, and that everyone can benefit if that budget can go down from 50% allocation to fighting forest fires down to even below 16% where it was 5 or 10 years ago, and back down to hopefully 2 or 3% or zero. Who knows if we try. But anyway, the dense forests are sucking up water resources. They're ballooning the costs of fighting the fires themselves. We're losing homes, pets, children, everything else, because people have their head up their asses and they don't want to look at solutions. They just want to talk about what the place to blame. So anyway, my name is Monty Henry, owner of DPO Surveillance Equipment. I run a full-service surveillance and security equipment company. I have lifetime guarantees and warranties on all the products. 24/7, 365 tech sales and customer support. We have the largest inventory of items that not only can you buy, but you can rent and lay away as well. We have an ever and growing media library that consists of articles, podcasts, blogs, demonstration videos on various diverse subjects as economics and finance, cybersecurity, cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, health and fitness, surveillance and counter-surveillance, terrorism and anti-terrorism products, and technology. You name it. If you can name it, we're covering it. We just did an article on something called what is it called? It makes a reference to dust particles that are actually computer sensors are sensors. Basically, what it amounts to is the cost of power is going down so low that now you can have sensors, self-powered sensors embedded into everything imaginable. So in the very near future, your clothing, your wearables that you have on your arms, hands, fingers, or whatever, everything will be powered by these sensors who are deriving the power from the air. Just because scientists and engineers have figured out that, which they knew a long, long time ago, that the difference in the temperature in two different places, once they intermingle, they produce a certain type of energy. That's my cat, Lazy Bones. He has a lot to say about this too. Anyway, that's one of the topics. Go to the website, take a look at it. It's amongst the newer articles on there. You can't miss it. So in addition to articles on the latest breakthroughs in science, we accept Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, Litecoin, Ethereum, Bcash, etc., in our shopping cart on the website. So you crypto millionaires, you can contribute because you benefited like me and my wife and my family. We contributed. We got lucky, or we did something smart. Who knows? Whatever we want to call it. We invested in cryptocurrencies early on, and that way we got a chance to reap the benefits. You can too. Cryptocurrencies were the best performing asset class for the last 4 years or something. Even though this year, 2018, has been a downer year, it doesn't mean that you can't take advantage of lower prices for your favorite cryptocurrencies, your Bitcoins, Ethereum, Litecoins, all those things were on a big sale. So you just like you run out and get your big screen TVs when they go on sale, and computer monitors fly off the shelf. iPhones fly off the well, I don't know about iPhones, they don't discount too much, but your other smartphones, whatever, all these gadgets, they fly off the shelf when there's a big sale. Your investments are no different. Treat your investments like you do your electronic gadgets. When you get a discount, you go and buy. That's what you do. You don't stand there waiting and thinking that the world's coming to an end. You go out and buy cheap or discounted assets. I don't care if it's real estate, cryptocurrencies, gold, or whatever. Excuse me. Drinking my Sheila Jeet early in the morning, of course. Get my energy back up. Energy level after fasting yesterday, 24 hours. Just wrapped it up, and I now get to eat and drink everything back to normal again today. Anyway, get savvy with your investment. Get savvy with your investing. Get savvy with your saving. Okay. Financial literacy is not something to be proud of. What else is going on? The website is newly redesigned. Looks great. Works very good. Lots of compliments, and the articles are really getting a good amount of compliments and comments. So compliment or comment on the articles. We don't care if it's good, bad, negative, indifferent. Speak out. Let's get a discussion going. Let's see if we can get some ideas going, criticism, whatever. Participate. You only live once. You don't want to just let life pass you by completely. We want to poke a finger in the eye of the MasterCards and the Visas and the UBSs of the world. The Citibanks, American Expresses, all of them are crooks and criminals. Trust me. When you go to my website, when you read articles like central bankers and Federal Reserve people have sticky fingers too, when you read that article, you're going to see that article is getting so long is because every single day, if it's not UBS fighting the Justice Department because the Justice Department wants to make sure that they fine or penalize or hold UBS accountable for instance, mortgage financial scandal that took place in 2008. Yes, we're still looking at the resolution of those cases because it was such a big deal. When you have $1 trillion that goes up in smoke, it doesn't get resolved overnight. And we're still looking at penalizing and implicating the UBSs of the world, the JP Morgan Chases of the world, the Citibanks. Everybody was Morgan Stanley's, everybody had their fingers in it, and everybody wants to, now they want to distance themselves from it, but a lot of cases are still being wound up, so you're going to still hear a little bit about who did what, when, and how, and everything else. So yeah. Anyway, the financial industry is dying. It's corrupt. It's broken. The criminality is institutionalized. So we need to just abandon it. Get out of it. Okay. When you don't participate in a system, that system loses its power. So go over to the cryptocurrency space. If I were you guys, I would run to the cryptocurrency economy and start trying to figure out why people who are participating in the fiat economy, the dollar-based economy, are working 2 or 3 jobs at a time, and every family member is consolidating into one house or one basement, and everybody is still struggling, even after consolidations, even after liquidating the 401ks and the IRAs and such, and working 3 jobs each, including the dogs and the cats. They're still struggling. Meanwhile, the people in the cryptocurrency space, they're hodling for dear life. They can't wait for these things to go back up in value so they can go out and buy more Lamborghinis, pay off more mortgages, credit card loans, and everything to completely disconnect themselves from the fiat system. That's what we're waiting for as compared to the doomsday scenarios that are unfolding in the fiat-based economy, the dollar-based economy. Just read yesterday that Russia is moving as far away from the dollar-based economy at the U.S. dollar as possible, including China. Those stories have been playing out. I know you guys heard it for a long time. You're going to hear it continually because it's unfolding on a more accelerated pace. And unfortunately, those people who are stuck with dollars are going to be looking pretty sad as compared to those people who have been making transitions over a long period of time. Okay. So you don't want to be the last horse out of the barn when the barn catches fire, trust me. Anyway, let's take a look at this article, okay? This article, it really exemplifies what I'm saying. It's just another case. Another case of why you guys need to listen intently and understand what we're going through. Let's see, the name of this article, just responding to one of my wife's a text message. It's nothing important, but I just want to make sure I respond to that. Let's see, the name of this article, oh yeah, U.S. on a course to spend more in debt than defense. Again, United States on course let me let my wife know I'm doing a podcast. U.S. on course to spend more on debt than defense. Rising interest costs could crowd out other government spending priorities and rattle markets. In the past decade, U.S. debt held by the public has risen to $15.9 trillion from $5.1 trillion. But financing all of that debt hasn't been a problem. Low inflation and strong global demand for safe U.S. Treasury bonds held the government's interest down. Again, that $15 trillion does not include the complete budget deficit that we have, which is $22 trillion. That's in the process of changing. Okay, I get this the last sentence I read. Low inflation and strong global demand for safe U.S. treasury bonds held the government's interest costs down. That's in the process of changing. Interest rates are rising as inflation normalizes around the Federal Reserve's 2% target. That and the sheer scale of debt being accumulated by the federal government has put the U.S. on a path of rising interest costs that in years to come could crowd out other government spending priorities and rattle markets. Again, see, that's a very important paragraph, mainly because, see, a lot of you guys, you don't understand, you don't make the connections in terms of why you don't have infrastructure improvements, why you don't have a healthcare system that actually keeps you healthy, why you don't have a government that's actually willing and able to fund education and health for everyone without, turning it over to corporations to monetize the idea of keeping you healthy, for instance, to monetize the idea of you getting a good education. In other words, this is two of the most stupid concepts on the planet. If you want people that are healthy, that can think clearly and contribute to society, and if you want people who are in good shape, who actually can reason and understand and debate and have an intellectual conversation outside of 140 characters on Twitter, you have to understand this is not something to turn over to the private sector. This is something that everybody needs to contribute to. If we're going to pay taxes on anything, it should be to support public services such as health and education. Okay, the reason why other countries got this a long time ago is because they realize you don't want a huge divide in terms of who's healthy and who can afford and who's not, or who's intelligent, who can afford a good education and who can't. Those are two fundamental things that's going to either make your society, your citizens able to contribute or not. And the reason why Americans are so paranoid, schizophrenic, and uninformed and are powerless is because, again, we've corporatized and monetized everything that you can think of. Either it makes money or it's not worth looking at, right? Including socializing on supposedly social media, right? Facebook has done an excellent job at monetizing your personal information than anybody ever could imagine. What a concept, right? Let's keep moving. In 2017, interest costs on federal debt of $263 billion accounted for 6.6% of all government spending and 1.4% of gross domestic product, well below averages of the previous 50 years. The Congressional Budget Office estimates interest spending will rise to $915 billion, you guys, by 2028, or 13% of all outlays, or 3.1% of gross domestic product. So make sure you understand the implications of this, because, again, a lot of you who are struggling now, you're struggling because your government is out of control. Your federal government doesn't care about balancing budgets, how much money they print out, or anything else. And what's really stupid is state government agencies, they do try to balance budgets. Why would one of these government entities care about finances and being responsible when the other one, the major one, the federal government, could care less, right? If it's a $22 trillion budget or a $22 quadrillion budget, the federal government doesn't care. So that's where the problem is. One of them can print out money and avoid being responsible and not even have a budget at all, while the other ones try to make sure that the numbers match up, just like your checking account. What idiot would think that just because you have a lot of checks that you have a lot of money? Nothing could be further from the truth. Let's keep moving. Along that path, the government is expected to pass the following milestones. It will spend more on interest loans than it spends on Medicaid in 2020, more in 2023 than it spends on national defense, and more in 2025 than it spends on all non-defense discretionary programs combined, from funding for national parks, and we talked about national parks, or we talked about forests at least, going up in flames, right? Well, if there's even less money to fight fires and such, guess what's going to happen? The situation doesn't get better, it gets worse. Anyway, from funding for national parks, I'll throw in forests in there myself, to, matter of fact, I'll put this in here right now, national parks and forests. So when I publish this, you guys will see the difference, or the addition. From national parks and forests to scientific research to healthcare and education to the court system and infrastructure, according to the CBO. The CBO is a Congressional Budget Office. They oversee the spending of the federal government. And they're telling you, they're trying to warn you, just like everybody else tries to warn you, but no one listens. They're too busy working, probably. healthcare and education, scientific research, court system, infrastructure, national parks and forests. All these things are going to become less and less of a priority, which they are now, because no one in Washington wants to admit that we cannot come up with the money to do the things that we're supposed to do. The basic house cleaning, the basic management of the country is being neglected because, again, nobody wants to admit that the purse is empty. There's no money in the purse or the wallet. From defense to Medicaid, in other words, it will become a bipartisan challenge. The early 1990s were the last time the government interest was the government's interest expenses were high and rising. Back then, Washington politicians routinely worried about bond market vigilantes on Wall Street who threatened higher costs on debt if deficits were contained. To confront the problem, President George H.W. Bush did a budget deal with Democrats that raised taxes on the wealthy, alienating Republicans and undermining his chances for a second term in office. President Bill Clinton abandoned campaign promises of a big fiscal stimulus program. So, looking back, you guys, look, history is a pretty good predictor of what happens in the future. If President George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton, if these guys had enough insight and understanding to conclude that I can put my presidential reelection on the line and jeopardize it, or I can be responsible. I can admit that we don't need to continually lower taxes. We don't need to worry about our base or worry about how much money we can raise or not, or something for the next campaign. George Bush Sr. and Bill Clinton realized, look, we got to do something now, and it's not the most popular thing, but we're going to go ahead and tax the wealthy people. We're going to raise taxes, and we're going to, in the case of at least with Bill Clinton, produce a surplus. Like, what a concept! If your budget, your own personal budget, was such that you had more income than expenses, you probably would have a heart attack, because most Americans don't have any clue what it means to have a balanced budget or a surplus whereby you have more things on the asset side as compared to the liability side. Most people have just grown to get comfortable with the idea of having debt and juggling debt forever and thinking that that's the new normal, but it's not. Moving right along. By next September, a divided Congress will need to decide whether to extend a budget agreement which boosted federal spending by $300 billion for 2 years over limits enacted in a 2011 law. Beyond that, lawmakers need to decide whether to extend President Trump's individual income tax cuts, which are set to expire in 2015. So again, this idiot is playing by an old, outdated, retarded rule book or playbook, thinking that timing tax cuts with elections and midterms and everything else is convenient. It's not, okay? At some point in your presidency and at some point in your life, you got to do the hard things. You can't always do the easy things. The hard thing is to admit to everyone that this shit is out of control, in terms of what's happening in the United States, and we need to fix it. And it's not going to be pleasurable or palatable for anyone, at least not for a whole lot of people. But in the long run, you end up coming out better when you take your medicine. The fact that interest is the fastest growing part of the budget and is on track to eclipse other important pieces of the budget, for instance, spending on children, is going to cause more hesitation just to change every single item, said Maya McGinnis, the president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, a deficit watchdog group. The Treasury Department said last month outlets for net interest on the public debt rose 20% in fiscal year 2018, one of the key drivers behind increased spending last year. So anyway, when you start, look, you guys, 20% increase on public debt and on that net interest going up 20% is ridiculous. That's insane. People, I don't understand. How do you elect anybody into office who fails to make this the highest priority imaginable. Moving right along, debt as a share of gross domestic product is projected to climb over the next decade, from 78% at the end of this year, the highest it has been since the end of World War II, to 96.2% in 2028, according to CBO projections. As the overall size of our debt load grows, so do the size of interest payments. Basic math. At the same time, the Federal Reserve is in the process of gradually raising short-term interest rates. It is doing that because inflation has moved up to 2% from near zero in 2015. With unemployment low, it could go even higher. In the next 5 years, about 70% of the federal debt will mature and need to be refinanced at these higher interest rates. So in other words, the Federal Reserve is really doing all it can to throw the economy into a recession, purge the system of the excesses, all of the quantitative easing, all of the money printing, all of the foolishness that took place with wealth on Wall Street being accumulated into very, very few hands because of lax regulation and people looking the other way, while the finance industry on Wall Street just took advantage. All of that crap needs to be purged from the system. And the Federal Reserve is trying, but stupid Trump is trying to prolong the inevitable because he wants to make sure everyone gets reelected. He wants to be popular and all this other crap. But at the same time, Americans are suffering. The division between the rich and the poor is magnifying exponentially. 401ks are being treated like ATM machines. Car loans are going to be going up through the interest on car loans is going to go up, so people won't be able to afford their cars and the credit cards and the mortgage bills are going to go up because of the interest rates also, and that's going to further hurt people, right? But don't blame the Federal Reserve by themselves, because believe it or not, the whole system is built upon fallacy. Okay. Read the Creature of Jekyll Island and understand why the cryptocurrency industry is trying to replace or trying to help out, remedy the situation as compared to going on this suicide mission with the typical fiat dollar-based system. That's what it exemplifies. Moving right along. President Trump says the central bank and its chairman, Jerome Powell, are raising rates too fast, unnecessarily constraining economic growth and making it more difficult to manage the government's debt. Trump doesn't have a clue, okay? Jerome Powell is just doing what anyone would do. Sometimes you throw the economy into a recession, purge the system of all of the excesses. When assets are mispriced like they are now, nobody has a clue what a realistic price for housing is. No one has a clue in terms of why the value of gold has been stagnant for so. No one has a clue in terms of why properties in San Francisco and New York and California are such that only 2% of the people can afford them. No one has a clue why tech stocks and social media stocks were worth 30, 40, 50 billion dollars or more, or Instagram or some stupid social media site where you just basically upload pictures of cats. Why anyone should pay $30 billion for that? I'll tell you why. It's because too much money, stupid money, has flowed into too many of the wrong areas. And those excesses do cause misallocation of resources. They do cause mispricing. So try to connect the dots, you guys. If you can, I'll connect it for you. All right? Moving right along. I would like to see the rates be low, which is stupid grammar, and pay amortization, pay off debt, Mr. Trump said in an interview with the Wall Street Journal last month. And when he keeps raising interest rates, you can't do that. Well, I don't know. We can put this paragraph in the history books for the most stupid statement that didn't halfway address the problem in terms of what Trump just said. That's a quotation, by the way. And, the rate at which it is growing, the inability to pay off the interest and manage the nation's purse strings, that's the problem. Nothing to do with Jerome Powell, any other Federal Reserve person, any other central banker realizing that at some point you got to let rates normalize. He's not even really raising rates. Rates have to normalize. They've been kept artificially low. If the idiots in public office at the executive level in Washington, if they want to come out and tell everyone rates were artificially kept low for far too long, and we need to let them normalize. Not so much even care about who's raising them or not, but let them get back to a normal rate because they've been kept down artificially low. It hasn't produced the economic stimulus that we really should get. Obama was on the right trajectory in terms of addressing a crisis and getting this back to normal. But this idiot who's in office right now is doesn't have any idea in terms of what trajectory, what path we were on, and now he wants to set us back. It's going to be another 50 years or so to fix that problem. But who wants to wait? Who can wait? So we're going to make the transition over to cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and blockchains and such, and we don't have to worry about the rhetoric coming out of Washington from these idiots. Even if interest rates were falling, the government wouldn't be anywhere near paying off the debt. The U.S. Treasury is set to issue twice as much debt in 2018 as it did in 2017, according to the Treasury Department borrowing estimates. That's because the budget deficits are rising, the result of slow revenue growth associated with tax cuts and this year's deal between Republicans and Democrats to increase spending. So anyway, that paragraph or that statement right there just summed up what I said. When you have the inevitable consequences of constantly printing money and not being held accountable or responsible for it, this is what happens. You never, ever get to the point where you're addressing the problem. You're just papering over it. Just look at the amount of treasuries that are issued. I don't know if you guys are paying attention to that or not, but the United States government is issuing more treasuries to fund the debt. And guess what? Nobody wants them. Nobody cares about U.S. debt, buying these bonds and treasuries anymore. China and Japan and Russia and everybody else is reducing the purchasing of U.S. debt. Not the U.S. citizens can't afford it, and they're too stupid to even understand there's a problem that they could buy it as an alternative. But no one wants to touch it. So the government is issuing more debt to fund the keeping the lights being staying on and the grass being watered for the nation. But guess what? No one cares anymore. So the U.S. Treasury is grinding out these treasuries, auctioning them off to the public, and guess what? No one is showing up at the auctions. So that's what happens. Okay, the deficit will rise even further in the event of a recession as revenue slows and automatic spending for programs such as unemployment benefits and food stamps increase. That would lead the government to borrow even more, adding to interest expenses. The CBO's projections don't factor in a recession in the next decade, but it would be remarkable if one doesn't occur. The expansion is already on track to become the longest in U.S. history next June. Well, I'll tell you that we're in a recession. Whenever you see the numbers that I'm looking at, the inability to reduce household debt, corporate debt, fund pension liabilities, you're in a recession, okay? If you can't afford to pay your bills, for all intents and purposes, you're in a recession. When you have companies such as, you name it, Apple, Ford and GM, and the layoffs and the closings of the Sears and the JCPenney's and the Toys R Us stores, and the massive layoffs coming out of Verizon and Ford and all of these companies, they're telling you, Google, they're telling you revenues are slowing. Facebook telling you revenues are slowing. Google and Facebook, they were minting money like crazy, right? And it was based upon the fallacy that they were selling productive ads or ads that were actually benefiting those people who bought the ads. But that scam has been turned up, and now we're realizing that facade is collapsing. So now even some of those companies in the tech sector are finally admitting to the SEC that the revenue growth is not going to be what it was before, because obviously everybody's looking behind the Wizard of Oz's curtain, and they're realizing the emperor doesn't have any clothes at all. Looking back on what happened in the 1990s, Dean Baker, the co-director of the Center for Economic and Policy Research, a left-leaning think tank, says, "We've been there before, and it's worked out. Deficits back then turned to surpluses, thanks to tough budget choices by both parties and a long period of strong economic growth. Policymakers have plenty of opportunities to confront deficits in the coming years," Mr. Baker said, "but the opportunity to ignore them could be passing." Well, I just want to say the things that got us out of the last bind, if you will, they don't exist right now. We can make tough budget choices, that's true, but a long period of strong economic growth, that ain't going to happen. The demographics of the United States is such that more people are going into retirement, leaving the workforce. They won't be contributing to economic growth or prosperity. People are so paranoid because of Trump and others that people are led to believe that the immigrants have absolutely no place or no role in terms of contributing to our economic growth as it has been in the last 200 years. So people are paranoid and schizophrenic if you're not a natural born citizen of the United States, even though the only people that were originally here were the Indians, right? But so people are so paranoid of immigrants right now that you don't even get the influx of new cheap labor, people who are actually ambitious as compared to the Americans who are so fat, dumb, and lazy that there ain't no way in that world they're going to contribute, right? Because most of them are waiting on some entitlement or something to kick in so they can relax and take it easy, right? The small businesses, the entrepreneurship, all these things are being discouraged because the dollar has absolutely no value, and you could work your butt off like I am, and you will see for yourself that most of the people who call you, they want something for nothing, right? Because the economy, again, is in such peril that a $600 spy product might as well be a $60,000 product, right? Because, again, when you lose 90% of your value of your currency, everything is more expensive. So anyway, that's it for that particular article. And just be aware of the fact that these things are real. And it shows up at the gas station. It shows up at the grocery store. It shows up when you finish paying your bills and you have absolutely nothing to save, nothing to invest. And you got 2 or 3 more roommates, and everybody is driving Uber cars for a living, and they're renting out Airbnbs for everything, including the doghouse. That's not a good sign. That's a sign that ownership, as compared to rentership and the gig economy, is the only game in town, and that's not good. Once upon a time, it was a good thing to own something, to be able to pass something down from one generation to the other. It was a good idea to actually have some assets and a portfolio of investments or something, so that you can survive recessions and depressions. But when you go into a recession or a depression with debt and loans and such, that's not a good thing. Anyway, as I like to say at the conclusion of every single podcast, keep your eyes and ears open and stay safe out there. Have a good day. Bye.